Welcome to the TravelPulse podcast. Here's your host, Mark Murphy.
Yeah, you got Mark Murphy back with the TravelPulse podcast. And who else did you expect? Because I'm the only guy that does it. So, I'm back. And that is not travel news. That's not news of any sort. But glad to be here and glad to be in Florida right now. Down in Fort Lauderdale. I got out of New York. I was there for a couple of days. It's pretty damn cold. I don't know. Am I getting old? But I totally noticed that I really like the warm weather. Now, does that mean I'm becoming a snowbird? It's possible. But in the meantime, I got to tell you, in New York, as long as it's not snowing, I'm good. Because I got to remind you folks, I'm still on crutches. I'm hoping, for the love of God, getting off of them in the next couple of weeks. But right now, I'm on crutches and I love to fly and it shows. No, it sucks. But you do have some advantages when you're on crutches, folks, because guess what? You get to board early. You get to get in your seat ahead of time. You get to rapidly go through immigration in many cases. Throw in a wheelchair with me and forget about it. I'm cruising, which I did just last weekend. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I was last weekend on a great little trip. But with that said, I don't know if you guys have ever been on crutches. I've been on crutches numerous times. I mean, let's just sum it up. Multiple sprained ankles playing basketball, 5 knee surgeries, one that had me on crutches 6 months and in rehab for a year. It was brutal. And then now I've just hit past the 3-month mark with the latest injury. And I got to tell you, it's pretty amazing to me because whenever I go to New York, I'm always surprised that New Yorkers get such a bad rap because you know what? People have been awesome in New York. I mean, I'm on a crowded subway and people are, offering me their seats. And I see this all the time. I've witnessed it. I'm one of those people that gets up when I see somebody that looks like they could really use a seat. I pop up, hey, go ahead. No skin off my back. And that's pretty much been my experience. Everything from people holding doors for me, giving up seats, etc. And I think that needs to be mentioned because, again, New Yorkers get a bum rap sometimes, because we say, well, New Yorkers, they're not real friendly, they're whatever. And I think what happens is people who don't live in New York, and I've lived in New York off and on for years, going back to the 80s. New York has obviously changed dramatically in that time frame, but it's really interesting on how it's evolved because the same thing is true today. I think that was true a few years back, which is people have a tendency to think that New York is a little impersonal. No, what you don't understand is we're on a mission. We are going somewhere and we got blinders on. And when you say, excuse me, you got to say it loud and you got to say it probably 2 or 3 times. And we're like, oh, what do you need? What do you need? Yeah, oh, sure, yeah. And then we'll give you directions and everything else. That's my experience in terms of just asking for help in New York over the years. And I think that's many of you who do that. And you just got to realize that people are in a rush. They're going places. It's a busy city and it's just the way it is. So you have to stand out a little bit to get people's attention. It's not because we don't like you. It's not because we're ignoring you. It's because we're on a mission, maybe a mission from God. So with that said, wasn't the case today at LaGuardia Airport. So I was on a Delta flight from LaGuardia down to Fort Lauderdale. And because I was pre-checked, I got to the airport just a little less than an hour before takeoff. Went through pre-check, no problem. And grabbed some food. Showed up at the gate. The door wasn't even open. They were not even boarding yet. And you could not get anywhere near the gate. I mean, it was literally like the Titanic. And these people were lining up to get on the lifeboats. And I'm looking at them going, there's no way to pass through. They were 15 to 20 deep and about 15 across. It was unbelievable. And it was a corner gate. And I thought to myself, wow, it's like, you're all going to get on. Like, what is the panic? Now, because it's a Florida flight in the wintertime, got a lot of disabled people, a lot of wheelchairs. I lost track of how many wheelchairs there were. But they board the wheelchair folks first. And then I'm standing there in my crutches and I'm looking at the lady who's, going past me with the person in the wheelchair. And I was like, can I go on too? And the answer was, no, you don't have a wheelchair. So because I sucked it up and just cruised on my crutches to the gate, now I was barred from actually getting on board the plane and getting in a seat and getting more comfortable. So I had to stand there. And as I'm standing there, I should back up. I should tell you how I got to the front there. I literally had to squeeze, and this is not easy with a broken hip, between a set of chairs and the wall all the way to the right. And luckily I'm a skinny guy, so I was able to like just go and get up and get through. And I came around and was just kind of just waiting, you know, let everybody board, let me know when I can go on. And I noticed to my right, there were a lot of senior citizens there. And a bunch of them were up front. Now, a couple of them were in bad shape and they absolutely were shuffling, needed to get to get on the plane first, let them get settled in. And boy, I'm in crutches, but I'm still, compared to them, really young, really healthy, etc. And so that's great. But at the same time, I see this lady to my right, and she's also a senior citizen, but she's totally spry. She's bringing her own luggage on. She, no problem moving whatsoever. This lady does not need early boarding, folks. But she's off my right shoulder, and I can just see her like, it's like, I'm going to go. And I'm thinking, this lady's just going to run me she's just going to push me to the side to get on the damn plane, like ahead of me. And I'm very gracious normally, but as soon as the lady kind of said, okay, you can come up now, and I started to take a step, this lady was like making a move at the same time. We were going to have a collision with my crutches and her feet. And I said, excuse me, you've got two perfectly good legs. Do you mind if I go ahead and get on board? And she mumbled something. And I thought, yeah, seriously? You see, I'm on crutches, right? Now, this lady was having none of it, but she didn't say anything else. I boarded, case closed. Of course, I get on, I find my seat, and I go to sit down. And she's right behind me, right on my heels. And guess where she's sitting? In the middle seat, directly in the row behind me. And of course, I have to hear from her as to, I was boarding anyway, so. And I thought, oh my God, lady, you are the people that give New Yorkers a bad name. Well, I first thought. She told me she just got out of the hospital yesterday. And I said, well, you look pretty darn good. So, whatever it was, you obviously beat it. So that wasn't good enough. She was still mad at me because I guess, pushing people with crutches out of the way is kind of her style. And I just ignored her until there's a tap on my shoulder and she realized she was actually in the wrong row. And she was sitting in the middle seat next to me. So I got up, I looked at her and I said, yeah, today's your lucky day, isn't it? Yeah, she didn't even crack a smile, folks. Didn't even crack a smile because I was trying to just be playful, etc. But anyway, long story short, I was looking at some stuff on my computer. She asked me if I was in travel because I was looking at some websites. I'm going to be down filming at a Palladium property, TRS, the Coral property down in Costa Mujeres. And I was just taking a look at their site, looking at some other things, sending some emails. And when she asked me about it, I was like, well, no, I'm not in the travel business per se. I'm in the travel media business. And then we had this great conversation. And, all's well that ends well, right, folks? I mean, because let's face it, you can always have a little bit of a disagreement, always better to iron it out. So we had a nice conversation. I had to get back to work, and it probably lasted about 15, 20 minutes. Flew the rest of the way down. And then as we're getting ready to get off the plane, there was a scrum coming up the aisle because, again, people behind us, even though we got in 15 minutes early, they weren't going to miss connections or whatever the hell it was that was their problem. They were literally like lining up, and there was not even a gap to get out of the row. So I said, the hell with this. She's like, oh my God, are these people going to let us off? And I said, trust me, I'm going to get up, position myself in the aisle. This guy, he's not moving any further forward. And literally, as I stood up and put half my body in the aisle, he tried to bum rush past me, which earned him a Heisman in the chest. For you folks who know football, just go look up the Heisman Trophy. It is basically, a straight arm in the chest. Like, dude, you're not going anywhere. And then I helped the lady down with her luggage, even though, I'm on crutches because I could stand, and it was easier for me than her to try to get it out. And said, hey, we ended on a much better note. And this is how I ended it, right? I was like, we ended on a much better note than we started, And she's like, yes, we did. And then I couldn't help myself. I said, even though you tried to push a handicapped person out of the way to get on the plane. And I was joking. Yeah, she didn't think it was funny. So we were back to square one. So anyway, I thought New Yorkers would appreciate that humor, and I think most do. I hope you appreciate that humor. And if you don't, guess what? I don't really give a crap, to be frank, because I don't worry about what happens around me. I worry about whether I'm doing the right thing. And that's how everyone should be thinking. Like, are you doing the right thing? I'm just being playful with this lady, but she literally had no sense of humor. The only time she was engaging was when she was showing me pictures of her trip for 2.5 months around the world, and she was totally psyched about it. And I was like, wow, that's cool. And I was asking her questions, but God forbid you make a joke. No sense of humor. But she's down here. She's not my neighbor, so I don't have to see her again. And she's probably not going back for a long time. So, I doubt very much we'll cross paths. But that was my day at the airport. So I'm super happy that I made it down. And I'm super happy that I had something to tell you about, because I think it's a funny story. But anyway, enough of that. Let's talk about what some travel agents have been sharing with us in our Agent at Home community. We have a community where travel agents who are qualified can come in, they can sign up, and they can get into these discussions. So we asked them, what are some of the wackiest things that you've heard from clients? This is great. So one member, Krista, she said she had a client tell her that the islands in Hawaii look close together. So in order to save money, she would like to drive instead of fly between the islands. No joke. Another one, again, Hawaii, and this is Debbie. She said that she had clients that want to go to Hawaii, but they don't fly and they don't want to go on a boat. Can they take a train? Now, that is unbelievable, but no joke. This is what agents hear. We also hear what currency do they take in Hawaii? You get the same question sometimes in Alaska. There are literally people that think Hawaii and Alaska are different countries, I guess, operating on a different monetary system. It is what it is. But we also, in this industry, you hear a lot of other crazy things. So how about toilet fear? Have you ever heard somebody that would request that the clear bathroom doors be removed because the wife was telling the travel agent that the husband had a poop phobia and he wouldn't be able to use the bathroom if they didn't remove those and put on like a normal door? And that quote would make for a long week, unquote. Okay, that was Dale. Dale, I've never heard such a crazy thing. So, I mean, you're with your wife. Okay, well, you've got a phobia. I didn't know there was such a thing as a poop phobia, but there's probably a phobia for everything. Well, with that said, some people on the high end, they look for unique experiences. So, when you go somewhere and you're saying, I want to do something that nobody else can do or can, lay claim to, or it's like so exclusive, right? So this one agent said that she had a luxury client and they decided that they wanted a real dolphin for her son's 6th birthday, and figured because they had rented a vacation villa and it had a huge saltwater pool that it would be a great idea. She basically called up and asked the travel agent, can you make that happen? The agent's first reaction was, are you talking about a live dolphin or a remote controlled one? And she said, well, of course a real one. And she didn't care how much it actually cost. The agent said, I'll tell you what I can do and I'll see if I can figure it out. And after several calls to see if she could bring a dolphin for her client and put it in the damn swimming pool, she called the husband to basically break the news, which did not happen. So, of course, the husband was shocked about the request and then said, do me a favor, don't listen to my wife. She's just trying to impress one of our invited guests for the villa. And that was Terry. So, some good stuff. I mean, great requests. I mean, who would have thought? Now, how about the Virgin discount? Have you ever heard of a Virgin discount? A Virgin Disney, I'm not talking about Virgin Airways or the soon-to-be Virgin Cruise Line. I'm talking about a traveler asking if hotels give a discount to honeymooners who remained virgins until they got married. No joke. And that was Caroline. She shared that with us, as well as this one, a client requesting a middle seat on a plane because in the event of a crash, the people on each side would cushion them and they would have a more likely chance to survive. That is just ridiculous. But this is how people think. And anybody out there who's listening, who's in the retail space, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can get the weirdest requests. Or like me, I was a waiter for one summer. I sucked at it. And it was at this freaking 24-hour diner restaurant in East Windsor, New Jersey on Route 130. It's like, if you've ever been to New Jersey, Route 130 is lined with diners. And I was a waiter at one of them. And the way I got the job was I lied. I told them that I had worked at a resort in the Catskills, which I never did. They never bothered to check it out. And I showed up not knowing a damn thing about how to be a waiter. Never had any training, not a clue. So I was a complete disaster. But despite that, I was able to get through the summer. And I always loved the requests. You could put a big, huge menu with a big, huge type across the top that says no substitutions. And I swear to you, every freaking day, multiple times a day, people would say, can I substitute this for that? And you think to yourself, can you not read? I mean, it's like a billboard. But they'll still ask. And the answer is always no. And then they get angry at you as the waiter. And it's like, well, how the hell is that my fault? And folks, that's the trouble with retail. You have to deal with requests. Some of them are reasonable. Some of them are out of control. Some of them are just dumb as can be. But you got to deal with the customer. And sometimes it's hard to say the customer is always right because a lot of times the customer isn't right. And you just got to deal with it. But anyway, there are a few other things that I find pretty interesting. One of them is just one of the news stories. It seems that people are trying to bring things on planes or, trying to smuggle things, and they're not really bright. I'm not talking about drugs. I'm talking about the guy in Berlin's, in the airport in Berlin that I fly out of. I've gone out of Tegel. I don't think I've gone out of the other one. Schoenfeld, I think is how you say it. But anyway, Schoenfeld. A guy was caught going through security and they said, sir, what's in your pants? Now, that's a loaded question. Now, imagine their surprise when he pulled out a bag that included a 16-inch baby boa in his pants. So the guy's literally getting on a plane with a snake in his pants, and it's not what you're thinking. An actual freaking snake. So that's kind of crazy. But at the airport in Singapore, another guy, again, in his pants, tried to smuggle 4 kittens in his pants. So what are these people thinking of? Like kittens, like you can't get kittens, wherever the hell you're going. You're literally going to smuggle 4 kittens, or you can't put them in like a carrier. What is the point? Are you saving $100? I don't get it. I mean, I get the boa because it's on the list and, endangered, blah, blah, blah. And where they were coming from, it's just basically a protected species. You can't just stick it in a bag and stick it in your pants. But kittens? That makes no sense to me. Unless there's some kind of like special kittens that I wasn't aware of. But so on the other side, there's a great story this week about a kidnapping in Cancun that was thwarted. And basically, this family, they were in Tulum, and all of a sudden they turned around and their 2-year-old and their nanny were gone. They reported them missing. Kudos to the police in Quintana Roo, because what ended up happening was they basically were on the lookout for these folks, for this nanny and this 2-year-old, and they immediately, as they entered the airport, they grabbed the woman and they grabbed the 2-year-old, and they ended up not getting on a flight to Istanbul because the woman had tickets to take the baby to Istanbul. That's scary as hell as a parent. But obviously, they did their job, and the police down there and the security were able to quickly recover that. It could have been a much worse news day, obviously. So that's fantastic. I'm glad to hear that, because Mexico gets a bad rap, and hopefully people will see that news. I think that's fantastic. And also, just as a side note, you'd be amazed at the human trafficking that takes place on planes and from different countries, etc. And so don't be afraid if you see something that doesn't look right, that you're making somebody aware of it. And flight attendants are trained to look out for this stuff. So they're sort of that first line of defense. And there have been numerous times that flight attendants have identified people that were smuggling or, basically human slavery, and they were able to thwart that and save some children from a horrendous situation. So you can participate in that as well. You can keep your eyes open, and anything that doesn't look right, doesn't sound right, I got to tell you, it probably isn't right. So at least give somebody that has the power to deal with it. You don't have to step in yourself. Just go tell an official and, see what happens. You don't have to, you can just be anonymous. It doesn't matter. You're not going to be like testifying or anything. So definitely speak up if you see something strange. Now, I just want you to, before I get into some information, I just want you to know that, my flight today, we had a little extra going on even before we took off that had nothing to do with the lady and, cutting in line and all that other stuff. It was this. Don't you love that? Don't you just love getting on a plane and being like, awesome, man, there's a screaming baby. That's fantastic. I'm excited. That's going to be a great flight. I get why I have kids. And I understand when you're a baby and you're dealing with the pressure in your ears, you don't know how to clear your ears, obviously, as an infant. You're going to be screaming because it's got to be excruciatingly painful. We've all been through it as adults. Imagine being a kid. And so felt bad for the kid, but I'm like, for the love of God, we haven't even taken off yet, let alone, there's no cabin pressure. So this kid was just screaming. So yeah, to round out my air experience today, it just sucked. But my experience last weekend was pretty cool. So last weekend, I got invited to go experience this property known as Sanctuary down in the Dominican Republic. It's managed by Playa Resorts, and they were going to be hosting about 130 travel agents who had achieved a certain level of sales and were invited down to celebrate that for 3 nights and 4 days. And while there, experience Sanctuary and go check out the new Hyatt Ziva and Zilara that's going up. It's under construction and it'll be finished in the fall of this year. And that's right up the beach. And they were also invited to go check out the new La Romana, because the new La Romana is going to be a Hilton and it's being rebranded, and they're basically staging some renovations there right now. I didn't have a chance to see that product. I did see the construction site for the Hyatt Ziva and Zilara, and of course spent a lot of time at the Sanctuary. And we were there to participate with the agents, but also we were there specifically to create content, shoot video, and give some insights into the property. And what's amazing about this property is they just renovated all of the rooms, and they just added 180 rooms in 2 towers, brand new towers, and they built them in less than 6 months. I mean, you're going to be blown away. So what was a small boutique property has doubled in size basically overnight, and the staff is absorbing those new rooms. And they had a couple of hiccups, but you could tell it had only been a few weeks since the new towers opened up, and the location, the product itself is fantastic. It's really it's one of the most interesting properties you're going to see, because at one end, on the east end, you've got something called the Castle, and it's literally the owner built it like a castle. It's wild. And in it, there's a suite called the Island Suite, and it has 3 pools inside in the suite itself. And you have an unobstructed view of the ocean. You have a huge terrace. You have a huge grassy area that leads out to the water. It's just a fantastic thing. And people don't realize the Dominican Republic years and years and years ago, it was just like a really cheap getaway, but there's a massive amount of investment going on. And, Punta Cana, the name Punta Cana, that's where you fly into. These properties are in Cap Cana, which is just another section there. And it's totally safe. They're putting in high-end properties, 5-star amenities. It's really, really growing leaps and bounds. And I want to say the last time I was there was probably 12 or 13 years ago. And, most of the stuff I'm talking about, like this Cap Cana, what wasn't even there. Like this sanctuary was built in 2007, and they just renovated everything and added these towers. So definitely a treat and a great value for what you're getting. Just to put it in perspective, that huge suite with the 3 pools would sell for 3 times as much if it was in Jamaica or Cancun or any of those other destinations. And so I think for those folks who want to have a wow experience and get away, great opportunity and a great property to do that at. I had a great time filming, cruising around with my guy. I call him Ezekiel, but in Spanish it sounds a little differently, so they didn't know who I was looking for. But then they caught on. They're like, oh yeah, again, I can't remember how exactly it's pronounced, but I pronounce it like Ezekiel and Ezekiel bread. And he was cruising around, and the rooms manager was there, and we were just laughing the whole time. And this guy that works with me, who runs our operation in Canada, John Kirk, he's got all these voices that he does. I mean, I think he's definitely a frustrated actor. Okay, let's just call it what it is. Kirk, you're a frustrated actor. But dude, you had me laughing my ass off because he was doing the Wallace character. I think it's Sean Wallace. He's the little guy in Princess Bride. And I'm not gonna do it justice, and maybe I'll get John on a future podcast, and he can actually do it for you because it's dead on. I mean, we're cruising in the golf cart because that's how we're cruising around, shooting the video with our equipment and our guys. And he's like, "You see, you didn't see. I switched the glasses, and you got the poison glass, and I got the one with that." Google Sean Wallace Princess Bride scene. It's like 5.5 minutes long, where he ends up getting the poison and drops dead. And the laugh is to die for. So after I asked John to do it like 4 or 5 more times, the whole thing, like, the lead up to it and the crazy laugh, then we spent, probably 20 minutes killing time as we cruised around doing the laugh. Yeah, that's how we basically spend some time at Sanctuary. So if you were one of the guests at Sanctuary and we went by doing that, we apologize. But every time we did it, we laughed so hard we were crying. And luckily, there were 130 people that were part of our group, and it was mostly those folks. So they already know we're nuts, and I think they were just laughing because we were laughing. So can you snare any last-minute deals? Martin Luther King weekend? Not happening, folks. If you're going north, if you wanted to fly up to New York, no problem coming from Florida. However, if you're going the other way, folks, man. I was looking at airfare because at one point I was going to fly down for the weekend to Florida and then fly back up to New York because I have to be in New York on Monday night. And forget it. It was the airfares that usually can be had for $200 to $400, even as little as $150. They were $1,100 and some were $2,500 to go between Philly or New York and Fort Lauderdale. It was through the roof. Why? Because they do what's called yield management. They charge the most for the last seats that are available, especially if the plane is full. And that's where they get people that have to travel. And a lot of times it's business travelers, and they got to get back or they got to get to a meeting, and they pay through the nose. So with that said, I made sure that we were covered, and I ended up coming down to Florida earlier. And today I'm going to stay till Sunday, and I'm going to fly to New York Sunday. And other than the change fee, it was just, I don't know, like $50 extra to do that, even though I made a bunch of changes. And if I was going the other way, I would have been screwed. So it's kind of zig when they zag in travel. And you've heard a lot of different ways about it. Book periods where there's downturns. Anybody who has flexibility when it comes to travel saves a bundle. And that's my last parting tip. Next week, I'll be at the Travi Awards on Wednesday. So what does that mean for the podcast? Well, we might do a pre-Travi podcast we may do a day of Travie podcast, or we might do a day after Travie podcast. Pretty much like every other week, because I have no freaking idea when I'm going to fit it in or even what we're going to talk about next week. But I'm sure, just like every week, there's going to be more news, more things happening. And in this unpredictable world, stand by, because we'll be there in New York City celebrating the best of the best, the Oscars of the travel industry, the Travie Awards. And if you're coming, looking forward to seeing you all. And hopefully by then, I will just be on a cane and be able to cruise the stage a little better than with the crutches I've been using for the last 3 months. So fingers crossed, I'll see you next week.